You have a habit that you have never fully explained to anyone. Maybe you cannot sleep unless the room is completely dark and the door is at a specific angle. Maybe you reorganize things that are already organized. Maybe you replay conversations in your head for hours after they are over, analyzing every word, every pause, every possible interpretation of what the other person meant. Maybe you need complete silence to think, or you need constant background noise to focus. Maybe you eat the same meal on the same day every week without consciously deciding to. Maybe you check the door lock 3 times before you can sleep, even though you already know it is locked. You probably call these things quirks, odd habits, personal weirdness. You have maybe laughed about them with people who know you well. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you have probably wondered, at least once, whether these habits mean something. Whether they say something about you that you have not quite been able to put into words yourself. They do, and what they say is far more precise, far more revealing, and far more scientifically grounded than you probably expect. Today, we are going to look at what your strange habits are actually communicating about your nervous system, your history, your cognitive style, and the specific ways your brain learned to navigate a world that felt uncertain, because your weird habits are not random. They are not personality quirks without explanation. They are a language. And once you understand what they are saying, you will never look at your own behavior the same way again. Let us start with the habit that affects more people than almost any other, and that almost nobody understands correctly. Repetitive checking. Checking the door, checking the stove, checking your phone, checking that you sent the email, checking that you said the right thing. Going back to verify something you already verified 30 seconds ago. Most people who do this describe it the same way. They know the door is locked. They watch themselves lock it. And yet something in their brain refuses to accept that knowledge as sufficient. The loop does not close, so they check again. The standard explanation for this is anxiety, and that is not wrong, but it is incomplete in a way that misses the most important thing. What repetitive checking actually reveals is a specific pattern in how the brain processes certainty. Researchers studying obsessive-compulsive patterns found that people who check repeatedly do not have a problem with the door. They have a difference in how their prefrontal cortex communicates with the basal ganglia, the part of the brain responsible for signaling that a task is complete and the loop can close. In a brain where that signal fires reliably, you lock the door and the checking urge dissolves. In a brain where that signal is weaker or less consistent, the urge persists even when the rational mind knows the task is done. But here is what this actually reveals about the person. People with strong checking habits almost universally show elevated sensitivity to potential negative outcomes. Their brain is running a risk assessment program that is calibrated slightly more cautiously than average. It requires more confirmation before it is willing to declare something safe. That calibration is not a malfunction. In environments where errors have serious consequences, and for much of human history, errors did have serious consequences, that level of caution was a genuine cognitive advantage. The person who checked twice that the fire was out before sleeping was the person whose shelter did not burn down. The habit that feels like anxiety in a modern context was once a survival asset. Understanding this does not make the checking less disruptive, but it changes the relationship with it entirely. The brain is not broken. It is running a risk management system that is set slightly higher than necessary for the current environment. That is a very different thing. Now let us talk about a habit that sits at the opposite end of the behavioral spectrum, but reveals something equally precise. Extreme routine maintenance. The person who eats the same breakfast every day, who takes the same route to work even when a faster one is available, who becomes genuinely unsettled when plans change at the last minute, who structures their environment with a consistency that other people find unnecessary or even rigid. From the outside, this looks like inflexibility, like an inability to adapt, like someone who is perhaps a little too attached to control, but the neuroscience tells a completely different story. Routine maintenance at this level is almost always associated with one specific cognitive characteristic: an unusually high baseline cognitive load. People who maintain rigid routines are typically people whose brains are processing a significantly larger volume of information, analysis, and internal activity than average. For these people, routines are not a preference. They are a resource management strategy. Every decision that is automated, every meal that does not require choosing, every route that does not require navigating, every morning that unfolds in a predictable sequence is a decision that does not consume cognitive bandwidth. And that conserved bandwidth is available for the things the brain is actually trying to do. Barack Obama famously wore the same style of clothing every day during his presidency. He described this explicitly, eliminating trivial decisions from his daily routine was a deliberate strategy to protect his decision-making capacity for decisions that actually mattered. Darwin took the same walk at the same time every single day for decades. These were not people who lacked creativity or flexibility. They were people who understood, consciously or intuitively, that their cognitive resources were finite, and that routine was the most efficient way to protect those resources for the work that required them most. If you are a person who clings to routine in ways that other people find puzzling, your brain is probably doing more than other people realize. The rigidity is not a limitation. It is a load management system running in the background of a mind that has more running on it than most. Step back now and look at what all of these habits share, because the pattern is more important than any individual example. Every habit we have discussed, the checking, the routine maintenance, the conversation replay, the sensory specificity, is the surface expression of a neurological characteristic that runs much deeper than the behavior itself. None of them are random. None of them are meaningless. Each one is a behavioral signature of a specific way the brain processes information, manages resources, assesses risk, or filters experience. And in almost every case, the characteristic that produces the habit that feels like a problem also produces a capacity that is genuinely valuable. The brain that checks obsessively is the brain calibrated for caution in high-stakes environments. The brain that maintains rigid routine is the brain managing an unusually high cognitive load. The brain that replays conversations is the brain processing social information at an unusually high level of detail. The brain that responds intensely to sensory input is the brain capable of perceiving at an unusually fine level of resolution. Your weird habits are not your flaws. They are the exhaust from your engine. Something specific and powerful is running underneath. You are not weird. You are specific. And specific, understood clearly, is an extraordinary thing to be. The next video goes further. We are going to look at what highly specific neurological profiles, the ones that produce these kinds of habits, have historically produced when they were given the right environment to operate in. The names attached to those profiles will surprise you. Stay curious, stay informed, and the next time someone calls one of your habits strange, remember that strange is usually just specific, seen by someone who does not have the same engine running.